In 2015, internally displaced persons were recognized explicitly for the first time in an international framework through the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This marked an important step towards acknowledging the importance of including IDPs in national and regional sustainable development planning. It was also critical towards ensuring that no one is left behind in the development gains occurred. However, although the Agenda 2030 and its SDGs acknowledge IDPs as a vulnerable group that require specific attention, they do not include specific targets on IDPs. While processes to include general national populations in assessments on whether a country is or is not on track to achieve the SDGs are well established, the inclusion of IDPs in data collection activities and in understanding whether these populations are at risk of being left behind from sustainable development gains is often impeded due to a range of reasons. These can include a lack of data, the fact IDPs are often located in fragile and conflict-affected settings that have access limitations, limited data collection capacities, or in contexts of protracted displacement, confusion about when a durable resolution of displacement has been achieved. With the number of IDPs at its highest in recorded history, the need for stronger and more comprehensive data to ensure evidence-based policies and programming is clear. This was further reaffirmed by the high-level panel on internally displaced persons, shining a light on internal displacement, a vision for the future report, and the newly released Secretary General's Action Agenda on Internal Displacement, which highlighted that action should be based on high quality and trusted data and analysis. This will not only support durable solutions for IDPs, but also ensure those who are most vulnerable are not left behind, realizing the goals of the Agenda 2030. My name is Mariam, and in this podcast, we will be exploring pathways to integrate and include IDP data in tracking out achievements towards Agenda 2030 and its SDGs. We are excited to host an excellent panel of technical experts who will provide their views and insights on the topic, presenting national, regional, and global perspectives. Now we turn to our first guest, Dr. Ayman Zohri. Dr. Ayman Zohri is an expert on population and migration studies based in Cairo, Egypt. He is the founding president and president of the Egyptian Society for Migration Studies and works as an adjunct professor in the American University in Cairo. Dr. Zohri's research interests have shifted increasingly to the study of migration, including internal migration and urbanization, labor migration, irregular migration, migration governance, and migration policies in the Middle East and North Africa and Europe. Welcome, Dr. Ayman. We're very happy to have you in our podcast. I want to open with a broad question. When we talk about the integration of IDPs into national and international development process and measurements, what is the current state of play with respect to the inclusion of IDPs as a category in national statistical systems and consequently in national development plans?
Internally displaced persons or IDPs is less appealing issue than refugees. Though number of internally displaced persons worldwide is almost or more than double number of refugees. With respect to the development impact or the issues related to the development as related to IDPs is also an issue that needs more attention from the governments, simply because IDPs, when they move from one place to the other in the same country, they actually bring with them their culture, of course, their knowledge, their previous experience. So in fact, governments are required to get benefit of IDPs by including them in their national plans and national development plans while they are in the status of internally displaced, and also when they return, if they return to their usual residence, places of usual residence, or even sometimes they return to other places that they like to resettle inside the country.
Thank you, Dr. Ayman.
Now we turn to our second guest, Mr. Asfand Waqar, who is currently the Program Coordinator of Data Management at IOM Libya, overlooking data research and DTM programming, with 12 years of professional experience, including 7 years of field and coordination work related to IDPs and migrants' data, analysis and reporting in the MENA region.
Hello, Asfand. We're very pleased to have you today with us as well. And this time my question is directed towards you. You have highlighted the recommendations out of the Shining a Light on Internal Displacement, a Vision for the Future report, and the international processes towards better statistics on IDPs that are underway. I want to ask you, where do you see IDP data being covered and included? What kind of data is collected on IDPs and by whom? Conversely, what do you think are the challenges that limit the integration of data on IDPs in SDG indicators?
Thank you for this question. And I must start by saying that the recent reinvigorated focus on resolving displacement via collective efforts and processes such as the one spearheaded by the UN Secretary General under his action agenda on internal displacement is much needed and about time. At this stage in time of our modern history, we record some of the highest numbers of people displaced within their countries due to violence, armed conflicts, disasters, and even because of the impact of climate change. So the data collected in relation to this current scale of displacement must highlight IDPs' circumstances, their stories, their vulnerabilities, humanitarian needs, as well as vital statistics that can help us plan better development outcomes and solutions for displaced populations as well. While the IDP data is already at the core of humanitarian response planning, it should also be covered within local, regional, or even national development plans. One of the great achievements we had at the time of framing the current Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, was an acknowledgement of displacement and migration as important development issues. Now with processes such as the UN Secretary General's Action Agenda, we have a great opportunity to set specific targets. These targets, of course, which would be set up or articulated in the form of data, should include measures of displacement, for instance, the number of people displaced, their demographics, or other characteristics, but should also go beyond by considering IDPs and their specific situation in connection to other development outcomes. These targets and the needed data could be related to IDPs' health, for example, under SDG 3, could be related to IDPs' access to education, that would be SDG 4, livelihoods, for example, which fall under the decent work and economic growth goal of SDG 8, but perhaps also related to poverty at large as well, SDG 1, zero hunger, which is SDG 2, and gender equality, SCD5. The point being that displacement affects all aspects of individual or family life, and therefore this should be acknowledged within the relevant target indicators and the data collected for that. Of course, currently the good examples of IDP data collected do come from IOM's programs such as Displacement Tracking Matrix, which collects vital IDP statistics and other displacement or migration related data in over 70 countries, largely within various humanitarian contexts. But we do need to see and encourage more government ownership as well, especially within the development context. That is where the challenge lies. The complexity of including mobile populations in area-wide statistics or development plans, especially as IDPs are not present where they were originally from and are often not counted within the administrative or local civil registration data of places where they are currently displaced. This is particularly complicated in urban displacement contexts with mixed IDP and host community populations. For example, in places or countries where there are no IDP camps, this is particularly challenging. So the national systems and data collections do need to adapt to better integrate data on IDP and in specific data on IDPs with regards to SDG indicators.
As important as it is, data collection itself is the first step of a broader process. The next question would be how we link this data collection to robust data analysis, and what do we do with the data we collect? At the country level, what are the good practices and examples of ways to integrate IDP data into development planning, policies, and activities?
Very good question, and I'm always of the opinion that we should only collect data once we have a clear data analysis or utilization plan. Now what this means in practice is that we ask ourselves first and foremost on what is a specific IDP related data needed for. If the data is needed to understand IDP's situation or conditions better, then as we often do in this case, we must have clear research questions in place. And so the data analysis and eventual use of this data for reporting or policy formulation, for example, is then going to be already linked with that, with those research questions. Or if the data needed is for a specific response or for a course of action, for example, within the humanitarian context, this data could be related to IDP's food security situation, then we clearly know on what analysis is needed and, more importantly, what action it may result in, such as provision of food or cash-based assistance to IDPs in need. Now, these are already some of the good country level examples that we have seen in a range of countries with internal displacement, for example, from Sudan to Libya to Iraq, where data collected in a pre-planned systematic manner, either for humanitarian assessments or research purposes for the specific humanitarian response plans, have been analyzed in an appropriate manner and has resulted in action. Now, when it comes to development planning or formulation of policies and activities relevant to addressing displacement within development contexts, some of the good practices are related to use of IDP data in formulation of strategies and in identifying areas or location for specific development activities that include IDPs within them. For example, in Libya, a national durable solution strategy has been formulated that strongly utilized IOM's DTM IDP data and analysis. This strategy, while awaiting government endorsement, has already informed the articulation of a collective outcome 1 under the Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework that UN has in Libya. This collective outcome is solely focused on achieving durable solutions for IDPs in Libya within the broader development context. Now, while already the data analysis on IDP populations, their movements, and the relevant trends has been helpful in framing of this collective outcome, the outcome also requires of us to further measure changes in the situation. Now, this means that within development context, we will continue to track displacement while also building our national counterparts' capacity to do this on their own. And furthermore, we will also collectively, that is like UN and the state of Libya together, also aim to go beyond the displacement tracking by planning to implement also specific durable solutions programming as well. This requires the integration of IDP data at country level on broader development indicators, for example, those related to access to basic services, housing, or even documentation. And this has to be done within the broader cooperation framework.
Many thanks for your time and telling us a bit more about these interesting aspects pertaining to IDP's Inclusion Project. As mentioned, we posted the links to the resources mentioned during our interview. We will be looking forward to the next phases of this research.